Welcome, everyone. My name is Jibek Valevka. Today, we have a guest, Gary Crotaz. He is one of our freelancers, or shall I say independent consultants. And a bit of an intro. I'm the head of community, and I work with our UK community, which is now more than 11,000 freelancers and independent contractors, independent talent. And Gary has been a great friend of Malt for a number of years now, both as a freelancer, and you have done probably, I don't even remember, a lot of projects with us, as well as you worked with us in a client as a client in a client capacity. But I think what I really enjoyed the most is an opportunity to work with you on the content and the webinars. And we've done some amazing webinars in the past. This is probably our fourth one or fifth.
I'm going to say fourth or fifth, yeah.
Fourth or fifth.
I keep getting rehired.
I know. That's why you're sharing these tips today. A bit of a housekeeping. We will share some slides and we will have a structured discussion, and feel free to ask questions along the way. I'm sure there might be some questions from the audience, from you as we discuss. This session is recorded and it will be shared with you automatically after this session, and you'll receive an email with the link to watch it. So if you, for example, are too busy and you want to do something else, please feel free. You will be shared this recording when the session ends. And I can see that there are many people in Europe. We have people in Netherlands, in Northern Ireland, sunny St. Albans. I don't know why it's sunny in St. Albans, because it's really, really dark here in the South London. What about you, Gary? You're not far from St. Albans, right?
I'm sunny St. Albans.
Oh,
Okay.
It's you. Sorry. Oh my gosh, I thought it was somebody. Okay, so it's you. Okay, Germany, yeah. Birmingham, amazing. So thank you everyone for your time. Let's talk about today's topic. I think this is one of the most pressing issues for all independent talent. We know that being a freelancer, being a consultant, an independent consultant, can be a bit lonely. We miss the camaraderie, we miss the infrastructure, etc. But the most important thing is no one really knows us, and every meeting, every opportunity to work with a client on a project is a unique opportunity to make an impression and build lasting relationships. And that's tricky, right? Because our freelancers are really great experts, but it requires a bit more, and maybe different types of skill set to be able to build this relationship, to be able to get rehired, and to be able to build a portfolio of clients. This is what I wanted to talk to you about, Gary, and I will hand it over to you in a second, so bear with me. Just wanted to lay a foundation for our conversation. And what I really wanted to do is for you to share, as a client and as a successful freelancer, your tips, your insights into what are the secrets of being able to work with the clients on multiple projects, not just, switching from one to another, but have a portfolio of really, really strong clients, as well as share some practical tips, some actions that our freelancers can basically start doing after the school, after this event. So that's really it. And I will start with the first slide, right? By introducing you in more detail. Shall I do it, or maybe I'll hand it over to you?
You start off and I'll fill in.
Okay. Gary is an independent consultant, and currently he's a chief coaching officer of Cultural Up, which is a very interesting business, a pioneering digital coaching business. And basically if I put it simply, it's a digital coach in your pocket that you can actually use to improve the quality of your professional life. Apart from that, Gary, you are a successful executive and mindset coach, and you've been coaching for a number of years now, right?
Many years.
Many years. Okay.
Professionally since about 2019.
Okay, amazing. And also, Gary is a former director of group strategy for Selfridges Group, a former group strategy and customer director of Mothercare. And you also sat on the board of the Rambert School of Ballet and Contemporary Dance, and also director of Rambert Grades. Mm-hmm. Have I missed anything?
No, thank you so much for the introduction. And Jibek, thank you to you and the Malt team for inviting me to come and do this important conversation. I think it's a really, really helpful thing. I'm super supportive of the work that you and the Malt team are doing to support freelancers. I'm passionate about the opportunity for freelancers to have a successful and sustainable career in freelance. And to do that, you need support and help. And you need advice and tips, and you need to build that kind of community. So as Jibek said, now I'm a coach, and I work for CultureLab, the digital coaching business. I've been myself a freelancer along the way as a strategy consultant. Now I'm a freelancer as an executive coach. I employ freelancers. So I've taken on this week a freelance executive assistant, and I self-published my book, The Idea Mindset, a year ago. And when I did that, I had a freelance editor and a freelance publicist and a freelance marketer and a freelance book designer. So I'm absolutely passionate that the freelance market is the place to get the best talent, flexibly to fit with your own needs. And so I've sat on both sides of the table. And I think that I'm really keen to bring through both my perspective as a freelancer and as a coach, but also as a client of freelancers. What is it that makes those relationships really last and go from project to project, opportunity to opportunity? I think that's the thing that I really want to bring through today.
Amazing. And let's start with maybe highlighting main things that hopefully will help our guests today to build these strong and lasting relationships with their clients without selling, because I mean, we sell almost on a daily basis to our close ones, to our friends, as well as to our colleagues, as of course clients. And I'm not saying that you don't need to sell. I think it's part of our life, but without maybe hot selling, without thinking, oh my God, what do I need to do to sell myself? Do I need to pitch myself? Do I need to, you don't really need to go extra mile. You only need to remember about two main things. So I'll hand it over to you to talk through this slide, Gary.
One of the most difficult words for people, particularly when they go freelance for the first time, is the word selling and sales, because when people think of that word, they imagine a certain character, a certain persona, a certain set of skills. And they often think, well, that's not me. I'm not a salesperson like you see on The Apprentice on TV, or, somebody at a market stall, somebody who's hard selling a product. I had on my podcast, it's called The Unlock Moment, and I had two sales experts from University of California on a couple of weeks back. And they said, the more you try to sell, the less convincing you are. And they go around the world and they talk to people, and their question is, who's the best salesperson you know, alive or dead, in any field? And they said the most common answers were people like Steve Jobs, Martin Luther King Jr., and Jesus. And then they say, well, people are selling all the time, whether they're convincing their kids to eat the dinner or they're building a relationship at work. Selling is not the actual, I need you to buy this product and here's the price bit. It's something much broader. And so these themes that we're bringing through on this slide about being your authentic self, being warm, being curious, that's all about building a relationship that leads to people wanting to work with you, wanting to purchase your services, wanting to have you on their team. It's not about going, I've got a product, you must buy it, this is why it's good. It's something much deeper and richer. And more than anything else, the most important word is authenticity. The way I sell, the way you sell, Jibek, the way people in the audience here will sell, will all be different. And the best way to sell is the way that's right for you. That's a really, really important message that I'd like to land.
So if I'm a freelancer, then it's almost like when you love somebody, you don't really need something from somebody, right? You're just building this relationship, hoping that in the end it will work out for both parties. So with a client, it's just being there for the client, right? And being yourself. And even if it's just one project, that's fine. But will these be like sort of a foundation for success? Just being there and being yourself without even hoping that in the end there will be like a lot of projects for you in the pipeline.
There's an interesting book that came out this year by Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, who's the world's leading executive coach. He coaches people like the CEO of Pfizer or the CEO of Ford, that kind of, that's where he is. He wrote this book called The Earned Life. And the principle at the heart of The Earned Life is that you should do what makes you happy now in this moment and let go of worrying about what's going to happen as a consequence of it. So if what you're doing today is to sell a product in a month's time, then you're likely to always be chasing something and likely to always be disappointed. I think that really applies here as well. So what you have to say is, in this moment right now, with my client, with my project, what are the things that I can do that make this a successful place? I'm happy, they're happy, this is going well. If you do that, then you can trust that most likely you're going to have good outcomes going forward. If you go, I think I need to do this thing, otherwise they're not going to make a different decision in a month's time, you end up not focusing on the moment. And the moment right now is the moment that really matters. So I think there is something about a little bit letting go of trying to make a thing happen in the future. Focus on what you can control today and allow that to build the kind of relationship that makes people want to work with you over time.
Okay, so no manipulations then. But instead, and let's talk about this. Instead, you maybe just want to try to understand your client, both the client situation, their needs. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's so important. I've interviewed a lot of freelancers, and the difference between those that you think these people are going to be really impactful in my team, they're really going to fit in, they're really going to add value, they're really going to connect across what we're doing. They're the people who don't show up and say, here's the list of things I can do, you need it. They're the people that show up and say, I understand a little bit of your world. I'm not an expert in your world because I'm not you, and that's okay. But I'm curious, I ask questions, and I show that I'm interested to align what I do with what you need. In Culture Lab, we regularly recruit freelancers. So we have a technology team, some of whom are in-house and some of whom are freelance. And now when we're interviewing people, it's usual that there are the sort of standard one-to-one type interviews or one-to-two type interviews. But then, particularly for the more senior roles, we're asking people to come and make a little presentation about their thoughts on the firm, the context of the firm, and the kinds of things that they would do. So you need to be prepared to really tune in to the needs of your client. So, you know, these ideas about conducting some research on the client and their industry, asking thoughtful questions, clarifying expectations and objectives of the project is really important. And for me, as a person on the buying side of the table, I know what information is available publicly. So I know we have a website. I know that on our website, there's information about our leadership. There's information about, you know, our vision and our purpose and maybe elements of our strategy. There's LinkedIn. For some organizations, there might be Glassdoor. You might look up on Google News whether somebody's been in the press, even if you're working for an individual, you know. So for my VA working for me, she had listened to my podcast before she spoke to me. If I know that all that is out there and I'm talking to somebody who doesn't know that stuff, then I think, well, how much do they really want it? And almost certainly I will be meeting other people who do. So this thing about starting to show that not only do you understand your client, but you are interested to understand your client, that's the more important part, is a really, really powerful step. I would argue that today it's almost a necessary step when starting to work with a new client.
So here what we have in terms of practical tips is conduct research on the client and the industry. This is what Gary has just told us about. Ask thoughtful questions during the initial meeting. So I guess the message is don't be afraid of asking questions. And yeah.
More and more now, these conversations are becoming 50-50. So 50% is me as the buyer trying to assess whether the freelancer is a good fit, can do the job, is somebody I'd want to work with, and 50% of the freelancer going, do I want to work with you? Because with great freelancers, they've got choices, you know, and they want to work in an environment that grows them, that they find is stimulating, that they're curious about. So think of it as an equal partnership in these conversations, you know. And I think that think about the kind of questions that are going to really trigger your client to feel like you are interested. So questions like, for example, what's the most important thing for you right now? Of all the different things going on, which one's the most important? What's keeping you up at night at the moment?
What's your problem?
What are the problems? What are the specific problems that you need help with that led to you saying, I need this role or need this project being done? If you could achieve just one goal in the next 3 months, what would it be? What would success look like in our working relationship together? And how would we know that we're on that track? So you can ask questions that are quite open and quite curious, quite inquisitive, but also quite powerful, because you get into what really matters for your client. And they may be saying to you, I need this project done. But what they might mean is, I need to launch my product to generate my revenue. This project is only a step on the way to doing that. And so what really matters to them might actually be, when I'm worried about that my product might not launch on time, and I might not generate the revenue, and I might not have a sustainable business here. And then you can start to put your project and their ask into the context of the wider business. And I think that makes a real difference in building that relationship.
On our platform, freelancers have the opportunity to ask questions when they are approached by the client, and our platform allows clients to reach out to our freelancers directly. And then the conversation starts and there are back and forth questions. So do you think it would be a good idea for our freelancers to have almost like a small library of questions? Because there will be questions based on the brief, right? But there will be questions that are not that related to the brief, but they will be about building this trusted relationships and being more than just another freelancer, right? Would that help them as well?
I think that's really helpful. And I think that what I'd say is, as you're in conversation with clients, notice the kinds of questions or the kind of conversations that deepen your relationship, and then note those down. So start to build a library, not just of random questions, and I've got 100 questions. It's more, there's a time when my relationship shifts from a person doing a project and they don't really know me, to now they start to see me as a trusted advisor or a trusted part of the team, or there's a thing I did that made a difference. Notice what that is. You know, it might be a moment when you went above and beyond. It might be a moment when you brought in some external experience. It might be a moment when you said, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not the best person for that, but I can help you think about how you could solve that problem. And you show your authenticity and self-awareness of when it is you and when it isn't you. That can be a really powerful trust building thing. And I think that's the idea of building trust is a real theme that should come through this conversation.
And last for this last question, I think as a person, and if I'm a freelancer, I'd be probably tempted to say, I can do that. I can do everything that I'm required to do, without genuinely clarifying and managing the expectations. I guess because I would really want to secure this project and then this role. What would be your advice? Because it's tempting, right? We need to find the balance.
Years ago, alongside my freelance career, my corporate career, my consulting career, I was also a professional ballroom dancer, a competitive ballroom dancer. And so often in my coaching, I bring stories from the dance studio for my training. And I remember my coach in a studio in northern Italy was teaching myself and my wife, we were a professional couple at the time. And he said, he was talking about choreography, and he said, why would you dance a step that you're not very good at and show that to the judges? Why, you know, if you're not very good at it, or it's not the absolute best you can deliver, just show them the bit that you're brilliant at, even if at the moment that means you do the same step over and over and over and over and over again around the floor. And I thought about that, and I thought, well, I thought that variety was good. I thought that showing the judges that I could do a variety of different things was really good. And he went, why would you show them something that isn't the best you can possibly be? And it changed my thinking. So I think my answer to your question is, to be rehired is a bunch of different things, but showing your expertise, showing that you are the best person they could possibly be working with is really important. And there's a lot of people out there who say, well, I can do a bit of everything. And experienced buyers of services, whether it's corporates or individuals, they know that we're all good at some things and not so good at other things. So we just don't believe it. We don't believe it. I get people coming to me on LinkedIn all the time saying, I can take over your business and do your selling and do your marketing, do your social media. And I'm sitting there going, I suspect you probably can't. But you're saying that because you want me to hand everything over to you. And of course, we never even get into a conversation. When somebody comes to me and says, I'm really good at this bit and I can help you with that bit, then I go, that's what I need. I need somebody to help me with that bit. So focus in on where you are really distinctive and outstanding in what you do, and build your personal brand around that thing. We'll talk a little bit more later about personal brand, but that idea of people knowing when they should hire you, that's a really important question.
Okay. So we talked about questions, but understanding the client's needs and understanding the client is not only about asking questions, right? It's about getting that information out. So let's talk about how, and teach us how can we listen to the client? How can we hear the client?
And as an aside, but this is just the right moment, I'm really interested to know what people who are listening to the two of us talk are picking up on. And this is part of this awareness and the interaction. So if you're hearing things that we're talking about and that resonates for you, or you've got questions or you just comments on it, do put it in the chat. And I think it's really interesting then for everybody to be able to see what other people are noticing.
Yeah.
In coaching, I often talk to people about the art of noticing, which is different from the art of deciding or forming an opinion. It's just about building the self-awareness, building the awareness of the world around you. And that's really what this piece is about. Continuously listen to your clients. We're in a world right now where industries are disrupted. People are disrupted. People are doing things they've never done before. If they were working in person before, now they're working hybrid. Maybe they were working with a big team, now they're working with a small team, or vice versa. The way that their world was changing before is now changing very differently. You know, lots of people say to me, what I've been doing in a kind of repeated way for the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years doesn't work anymore. And so all the time they're having to reinvent. So when you think the day one that I start working with them, it may well be that 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, 3 months later, things have started to shift because of things in their control, because of things outside their control. And you need to be aware of that, because if you're sitting there plugging away in the direction that was set on day one, and yet your key stakeholders, your key relationships, they're starting to shift their priorities. Well, if you're going to be a really core member of their team, you have to be able to shift with them. So that's about, I say here, listening skills. It's not just listening with your ears, it's listening with your eyes, it's listening with your emotions. It's noticing how the dynamic goes between two people. It's noticing when you say something that you think would generate a certain response, and they don't seem to pick up on that. There seems to be something else going on. Well, how can you notice that? And so I talk about staying aware of what's going on around you. Set up a Google alert for your client so that when things happen that affect them, you're going to spot it. When I was working with clients, actually with Malt, this was a few years back, I had a Google alert for the company and for the key leaders. So whenever they popped up in anywhere globally, and you set a Google alert, so it's a weekly update or a daily update or in the moment, I often knew before the internal team that something was going on. And it wasn't something I necessarily did something with, but it made me really on the button of being able to adjust how I was acting with them, to ask a question, you know, is everything going all right? Do we need to check in on our milestones? You know, how are we thinking about the timeline of the project? And they would go, oh, that's quite interesting because something had happened. And of course, I was already aware of some of the fact of what had happened. Be responsive to your clients. So if, you know, as freelancers sometimes, and this is the right thing to do, you're very mindful of scope creep, and you're very mindful of drift. And we'll come on to talk later about delivering to the thing that you're signed up to do, and also adding additional value.
Yes.
But at the same time, if you come across to your client as super rigid, then that's not the kind of person that they then go, well, I really want to have this person on the next piece, because the people they want to work with are reasonably appropriately flexible to changing needs, changing context. And if you're not sure, if you think things might be changing, then just check in and have that open conversation. Again, the people like to work with the most are people where they build a strong relationship, you know, and it feels trusted. It doesn't feel like a sort of subservient relationship for the freelancer. It feels like you're truly in partnership. And part of that is you demonstrating that you're happy to go into conversation with them and ask about difficult topics. I feel as though the thing that you asked me to do at the beginning doesn't seem to be quite as high priority. Is that fair? You know, should we be thinking differently about how I'm using my time? They'll go, oh, thanks for raising that. Actually, I've been a bit snowed under, but it's really good. We probably should have that conversation. Great. You're building that trust. You're building that demonstration of awareness.
What if the client is rigid? Is there a way to crack a client that just gives you the brief, is not really like encouraging
so I do a lot of work,
efforts, attempts to do it in the relationships?
It's a great question. I do a lot of work with my coachees and with corporate teams on strengths, on their strengths. And there's a really nice little framework that you can use, regardless of whether you've done the formal psychometric, like the Gallup Clifton Strengths Assessment, but just thinking about you at your best, the environment when you're at your best, the things that you do brilliantly well, naturally do well, that you're skilled at doing, those kinds of things. The first one is, you get the best of me when this is true. You get the best of me when, you know, we're able to have conversations, when I'm working in a team, when we're working on something that's going to change the world. I'm really motivated by that. You get the best of me. You get the worst of me when, and then you think, okay, the worst of me, you get the worst of me when you don't give me clarity of objectives. You don't give me the tools that I need. You're not available for us to have a check-in. The third one is, you can count on me to. So you can count on me to, if we need to suddenly turn something around at short notice, actually, I'm really good at that. So you might throw me the slightly random thing and I'll just pick it up and hold it. And the fourth one is, and this is what I need from you. So for me to be at my best, what I need from you is a weekly 20-minute check-in that we can just make sure that we're staying on track. I need from you that if I say to you, you know, here's some risks to the project, you'll be responsive to that and we can have an open conversation. What I need from you is you send me the information 24 hours before the meeting so that I can digest it. So whatever it is for you, if the client is rigid, a way to cut through is to say to them, let me tell you about how you can get the best out of working with me.
Yes.
You know, this is what other people who've worked with me say, you know, and I often now, you know, if I've finished a project or if I'm in a relationship, working relationship with somebody, then I will say to them, what would you tell somebody else working with me is the best way to work with me? And then I share verbatim what they say, you know, no holds barred. So say the good things, say the bad things. And it just helps the people working with you in the future to go, all right, this is what I need. And then it becomes a much more open relationship.
Also, because sometimes projects are so like short, in order to, for my client, for you to get the best out of me, to use my full potential, this is the best way to move forward. I guess that's a really, really cool advice.
Yeah, it is.
I have.
I was looking at the comment that's just come into the chat from Kadrika. I feel that I'll be likely to get rehired if I show that I could get the job done with minimal supervision and adhere 110% to what I promised I could do and always be proactive with my delivery. And I really like that. I really like that because I think that's about commitment and it's about passion for the project. The piece that I would build in on top of that is to just ask the question, your context, how would I know if the needs were changing? If I was doing it with minimal supervision, that could be excellent, or it could mean that I'm a little bit distant from the needs of the client shifting. So that's that. I'm not saying that I don't think I have a different view, Kadrika, from what you're saying there, but I'm saying there's a good question for you to reflect on is if the client were to pivot, how would I know? And if you've got the things in place to help you to pivot, then you're in a really, really good place. But thank you for sharing. It's a really good comment. If other people have got similar comments, then post them in the chat. What do you think is the things that makes you most likely to be rehired?
Yes. And sorry if we are pronouncing your name incorrectly. I think it might be Natalia, because I think sometimes the surname goes first and the name goes second. So let's move then to the next slide and talk about the most important part of communications, communications with the clients. I decided to use this image because to me it feels like it's sort of reflecting sometimes the darkness, and yeah, it's sometimes really, really hard. But what is your advice? What are your tips to build this clear, consistent communications?
I think this is a great example of there's some hygiene factors and then there's some going above and beyond factors. So the hygiene factors are, you know, if your client reaches out to you, then respond, you know, and even in my contracts, when I'm working with people, when I'm working as a freelancer, in my contract, I say, I will come back to you as soon as is practicable or practical, and as a minimum within 24 hours. McKinsey, I'm sure it still has this in place, has a thing where they say, if another McKinsey alum who you don't know contacts you from anywhere in the world, you should respond within 24 hours. So this idea that there is you might be in a meeting, you might be working with somebody else, you might be, whatever, but you're committing to responding as promptly as possible, and you're setting expectations. And of course, your client's going to be in the same place too. What's more important than the actual timeline is that you are both committed to do whatever it takes to make the communication as good as it can be. Think about the communication channel that is the right one. Is it email? Is it WhatsApp? Is it Slack? Is it a phone call? Does your client like to have a conversation, like a verbal conversation, or do they like to have bullet points, or do they like to have chapter and verse in a 10-page email? One of the things that you might want to have a conversation about early on is, how do you like to communicate? What kind of information do you want to know? What do you want to know if things aren't going well? Do you need to know that immediately, or are you snowed under with other things and you just want me to do an email at the end of the week to let you know how you're getting on? And then this last point, be transparent about issues or challenges. I think this is something where for freelancers, it's easy to feel nervous about saying to your client that things aren't going well. And of course you try to rescue it and save it and so on. But actually it really builds trust when you have that conversation. You say, I don't have what I need to do that, or I'm not sure I'm the best person to do this, or, I'm seeing a risk starting to arise and we need to have a conversation about how we handle that. It's a really mature conversation. And I think that really helps build that trust. There's a little equation for trust that I found that's around trust in leadership. And it talks about the words that you use, the actions that you take, the emotional intelligence, so the sort of emotional intuition between you and the person you're working with. And then the one that is like a counter to trust is personal motive. So if you're displaying to your client too much of your personal motive and not enough of motivated to help them, then it tends to decrease trust in the relationship. And that's really important when you come through into the way you communicate. So you might, for example, not be available for the next hour because you're out with your child having ice cream. You might not want to share. The reason is because I'm out with my child having ice cream. Depends on the level of trust in your relationship. Because for some clients, either they just don't want to know, or they really want to feel like your whole world 24/7 is for their needs. And it doesn't have to be, but you want them to feel that way. So always be thinking about, when I communicate in the way I did, think first about, what did I want to say? How did I want to say it? What channel did I want to use? But then before you press send, think, if I was the client, with what's going on in their mind, with who they are, with how they think, with how they respond, and I received the thing I'm about to send, how would I feel? And what would I need to know? And then you might want to make some adjustments to your communication. One of the things I spend most time on when I'm working with coaching clients is taking themselves from in their head to in their client's head to how did that thing get heard? How did the thing that you said get heard by them? And what did they do next? And that's a really powerful element of how you can evolve your communication capability.
The emotional intelligence, right? Are mirror neurons.
Yeah.
There's another element of the equation that you mentioned, adaptability, AQ. So it's about what you said, adjusting, right? Based on the situation, your communication.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, you know, people, what's the equation where you go, I want to hire a freelancer? You want to hire somebody who is really good at what they do, really experienced, probably pretty specialized in what they do.
Yes.
Somebody who is flexible, somebody who is mature, and frankly is then lower cost than hiring a big firm or an agency or whoever it is to do the piece of work. But you're expecting to hire freelancers generally who are experienced and savvy and mature. And that comes through with all of this kind of the adaptability, the communication style. There's an expectation that that's one of the reasons why they're with you, because they know that you're going to do that well.
Okay, on to the next slide. So in the end, the freelancers are hired to provide deliverables, to provide good quality work. What are the secrets you can share? We have this amazing SpaceX dragon on the right side as an inspirational visual. I think they're amazing.
Yeah. I'm really glad you didn't use Virgin Orbit as your image. That wouldn't be the right one. I mean, here's an underpinning message from today. You know, a huge amount of getting rehired is about the people. People are people. People like to hire people that they build a good trust with, good relationship with. You don't get permission to get rehired because you've great people skills if your work isn't top notch. Yes. So, you know, you have to have high quality work. You have to be clear on what you are asked to do, clear with the client that you can do it or you can't. And then keep coming back and looping around as you go through. Am I delivering to the thing that I said I was going to do, that we committed that I was going to do? You have a project plan and timeline so that there are clear expectations of what's going to be delivered when, that you and the client can both say along the way, I know we're on track. The last thing that any client wants is a surprise. And getting to week 12 and finding that you're 20% off track is a really unfortunate thing to happen. Use project management tools. There are many tools out there now, particularly in the SaaS world. You know, I still do, I'm a bit old fashioned. I still do a lot with slides and Excel, but there's all sorts of, you know, much more clever tools that you can use. Find out what your client uses. They might use a platform or a system that you can get tied into to log your activity and all those kinds of things. And it's expected now. I mean, so many freelancers use these tools really well. So if you show up and you're not using it, then in 2023, you're going to stand out a little bit. But I think another key message is going above and beyond is really appreciated, but going above and beyond and in doing so missing one of the core requirements of the original project is not appreciated. So make sure that if you're going to 110%, that you have absolutely nailed the 100 and then you've added 10 on top. Don't deliver 90% of the base project and then 20% on top of something else to get to 110. Remember that, you know, for example, in a corporate environment, your individual client might go, I'm okay with that, actually. The 110 was really helpful and that additional stuff coming in was really useful. I'm okay that the original brief wasn't quite met. And then they take it to their finance department or their procurement department to have the payment signed off. And they say, well, we're paying for the original scope. Show me the scope, show me the outcomes. If it wasn't delivered, that's what we want to see. So make sure that you absolutely nail what's in your contract, what's in your scope of work and agreed to be done. And then if you can go above and beyond in a variety of ways, that's amazing. But the project requirements and keeping true to that all the way through, that's so important.
What if you can deliver certain bits for whatever reasons you realize that you just can't, you don't know or you can do these? I mean, ideally, you should have discussed it upfront, right? But along the way.
Well, the worst thing you can do is sit on that knowledge. And because what's going to happen is it's going to come out at some point, and that's going to be a surprise at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So imagine that you signed up for the project at the start, and you go, I don't quite know how we're going to do this because maybe we're in a new space, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to figure it out. And then 2 weeks in, you do further research, or you talk to some other experts, and then you find you can't do it, or it's not doable at all. Well, that's the thing that you should be bringing up in your conversation with your key stakeholder, and have that open, honest conversation and say, this is where we all were. We all thought this was possible, or I thought this was possible. Honestly, I found now that I can't do it. And I'd rather have that conversation with you now so that we can figure out what the right path forward is. Path could be we choose not to do it at all. Path could be you find somebody else to do it. Path 3 could be you push it back to a later date, and we'll readjust the scope of work, and we'll readjust the number of days or whatever it is that I'm doing to deliver. What's the client going to do? They're going to build more and more trust with you, because they're going to know that you are self-aware and that you're open and willing to have those kind of conversations. As a client, you're much more wary of people who keep saying that they can do everything, and then some of it doesn't get delivered. Because you don't trust them when they say it's going to be fine, it's going to deliver on time, because you go, well, the last 2 times it didn't. And I don't trust, I think that you're saying that to make me happy, as opposed to saying it because it's true. You want your client,
you actually want to help.
Right. When I'm very open with clients that I work with, and I say, for example, in coaching, if I'm talking to somebody about coaching, and I will say, this is what I would do. If you need this other thing, if you need that other thing, then I would suggest there's different and other ways of doing that. I can help you to find that, but I'm very clear on what I do and what I don't do. And what that does is it means there's no surprises, there's great clarity, great building of trust. And actually that's building that long-term relationship. I've got clients that I have had long-term working relationships with, where the first piece of work that was done with them, and this is probably going back now 15 years, first piece of work wasn't particularly successful. And at the time we had some quite challenging conversations about how it all laid out. And I remember one particular piece of work with a key stakeholder who's then hired me in multiple different contexts, privately and corporate, over the years. The first piece of work, I wasn't able to deliver the whole thing. And we agreed to reduce the number of days that I was doing. And we had an open conversation about it. And I did a bit of above and beyond work. And, we came to a good outcome. The consequence of that was I built a really long-standing sustainable relationship over 15 years with that person. It would have been very easy at the time for me to say, no, you've contracted this number of days, so long as I've delivered the minimum requirements in the contract, then that's what I expect. And that would have been fine. And it would have been the last time we ever worked together. So you have to think in the bigger picture about, what's the short-term and the long-term impact of the way I handle this thing in the moment, and what choices do I make.
And just a quick one about the tools. How would you feel as a client if you knew that the freelancer was using ChatGPT? Would that be okay?
It depends for what, I think. I wouldn't be comfortable if they were using ChatGPT and not saying they were using ChatGPT. And I think that, it's an excellent question. I think that for me, ChatGPT is a huge topic right now. If I come back to why I'm hiring that freelancer, is because I think they're excellent. Anything that makes me think they might not be is not going to help me build that sense of trust. However, if you have a challenge with, writing emails or, whatever it is, and you're using ChatGPT to help you do that better, I think that's okay. If you're going, my deliverable to you is 1,000-word essay, and I'm using ChatGPT to generate that 1,000-word essay, then, I think that that relationship won't last very long at all. So I think that you have to be, it comes back to, you should be there to do a thing that you're genuinely expert in. That's my general view. There are lots of freelancers out there who wouldn't be of that mindset, but the ones that get rehired tends to be the ones that build that deep trusting relationship about their quality of work over a period of time, and their attitude and their approach over a long period of time.
Okay, brilliant. I think I need to move a bit faster, and I'm asking too many questions because we have 12 slides and we're on number 7. So let's move to the next one. And yeah, it was a nice segue to this slide, going above and beyond to exceed clients' expectations. But I think we've already covered, yeah.
We've talked a lot about this. The one thing that I think I'd add in, you know, when you look at this slide, is bringing an external perspective, bringing in stories from other people doing it in the past, well and badly, bringing in anecdotes. So you might be, you know, imagine you're doing some freelance work for a corporate, and the people in that room have all worked for that business for 20 years. They know that business incredibly well, much better than you will ever know it, but they don't know the world outside that business. And you might have worked in 3 or 4 others in that space. And, you know, of course, you're not giving away, you know, confidential information, but giving people comfort that you bring a breadth of perspective is a really powerful way to go above and beyond, or make an introduction to somebody else for a conversation. Oh, you should meet this person who has been in a similar situation to you, or, you know, here's a tool that you might find quite useful. I was talking to somebody last night, yesterday, and they were talking about, I'm thinking about needing to hire a freelancer. And I went home and I introduced them to Ushebek because they didn't know Malt. And I was like, you know, you could try and find a freelancer from anywhere, but why not work with Europe's largest marketplace for freelancers? But, you know, and for me, that's just, it's just a natural thing to do when you're in that trusting relationship with the client. You know, you're doing it because you want to help, and that's who they want to work with.
And that's how they will remember you, because those extra touches.
Yeah.
Okay. So share the tools, framework, slides, whatever will help your client moving forward after the project ends. Difficult situations. I think we've touched it a little bit already with the communication side of things. But what would you advise? How to stay calm and professional?
This is hard.
When things are not going well.
This is hard, and for a lot of people, you know, hopefully you rarely or never come across a really difficult client situation, but sometimes you do. And the first thing I would say is step back from the situation, take a breath, and understand, first of all, is it me? And is it the work I've done, or a thing that I've dropped the ball? Or is it other stuff going on? You know, years and years and years ago, I was on a consulting team in a company, actually, but the manager was really frustrated for other reasons, but tore my slides up in front of the team, like literally tore my paper slides in front of the team. Memorable. And it became a great anecdote, actually. But I never held on to thinking that was because my work was shoddy, because the slides had some data on, and I knew that the data was robustly researched and turned out to be true. But it was a very awkward and, you know, thing at the time. And since then, you know, from time to time, you know, you find stressful, challenging times with clients. They could have all sorts of things going on in their company, outside of their company. You know, who knows what's going on at home for different people. So I think that it's really important for you to show your experience and your maturity, stay calm and professional, listen actively. What does that mean? It means listen properly, you know, focus your attention on that person. If things are, you know, slightly heated or challenging, you know, put your phone away and close your laptop and show them that you're listening to what they need. Think about time, actually. Think about, you know, if you're in a difficult conversation, it doesn't necessarily all have to be resolved there and then. So you might go, this has been a really helpful conversation. Why don't we reconvene tomorrow when we've had a chance both to reflect on it, and then we'll continue the conversation. Think about offering solutions and alternatives, but also, you know, think about your responsibility and their responsibility. So, you know, if it is absolutely, you've dropped the ball, something's gone wrong, you thought you were able to do something and it turned out that you weren't, or whatever, something like that, then you can say, well, you know, what are things that I can do to resolve the situation? What are things that we can do together to resolve the situation? But then sometimes, you know, people might be throwing rocks at your work, and it isn't to do with your work at all. It's to do with something different. And that's where time is really helpful. And you come back the day later and they go, I reflected overnight actually, and I think that I was being a bit harsh on your work, but I just had a difficult conversation with my boss, and da, 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 off you go. So there can be lots of different reasons for it. For you, the most important is just to sort of stay calm and professional in the circumstances. And it's never easy, but once it's happened 2 or 3 times, you get a feel for how to handle it. Try not to take it personally, and try to find a path forward.
Sometimes it's about them, not about you.
Exactly.
Amazing. I think we are approaching the end of the presentation, and I've got one question I would like to ask, and I encourage a guest to ask questions, because we will have maybe 2-3 minutes for Q&A session. But what about long-term relationships? I mean, I'm curious if it's possible to stay in touch after the completion of the project, but I think this slide is not about it, right?
Well, I think that it's all about building the long-term relationship. If you want to get rehired, you have to be mindful of how do you build something where you don't know, you might not be rehired straight away. You might be rehired in a year's time or 2 years' time or 3 years' time. I am regularly talking to people that, connecting in with people that I haven't worked with for up to 10 years. And that's the power of things like LinkedIn, more than anything else, LinkedIn. That if you think about who are the people that I would be interested to do more work with in the future. For example, so I did a probably 2-month project early in 2020 as a freelancer for an organization. And there was a particular senior person there that we connected well. And we stayed in good contact, and I sent her some introductions to people she would find quite useful. And she's now moved on from that organization to another organization. And it may well be that in the next 1 or 2 years, she'll be a client of mine for other reasons. The project that I was working with them on was actually a very short project and not really related to what I mainly do now. But I think you have to value building those relationships, and again, not anticipate how might this become useful in the future. You might just not know. You don't know when the person that you worked with in this small firm is going to go and get a job at, Adidas or Selfridges or wherever, and suddenly it changes that relationship. So I really encourage people to get on LinkedIn, be on LinkedIn, and be active on LinkedIn, which is you can do that very small ways. You can just, if somebody posts something that's important to them, you can say, congratulations, glad to see, love to hear about your new job. That's all it takes. It just builds that relationship. And then actually, in a very practical algorithm sort of way, if people interact with what you said, so if that person, might be a director in a company, if they like your post, so they say, I've just done this thing, you go, congratulations, hope everything's going well, they like your post. In them interacting with you, your content will then start to appear in their feed. So when you go, I've just got my new accreditation in my tech course, it's going to come up in their feed. And the reason it does is because they responded to your post. So the more you can get people to interact with you in the things you say on LinkedIn, the more when you say what you're doing, it's going to appear in their timeline. And I do a lot of that now on LinkedIn. And lots of people who I might not have been in active conversation with for some time will say, oh, I've been seeing all your stuff about your podcast. And I know that because I know how the algorithm works. So you can also think about staying relevant, staying in their mindset in the way that you build that long-term relationship.
Amazing. And what we were intending to do is to share, and it will be you, Gary, who will share those 3 top actions that freelancers can, I guess, or freelancers who will watch this recording can do straight away after this call.
And I think we have a slide for it. We do. There you go. This is Selfridges. Let's change the way we shop. Stay focused on the client's needs and stay curious. So don't just be curious at the start of the project. All the time, every week, be checking in and saying, are we still on track doing that thing? Is anything changed? Is there anything else I can do additionally? So just keep alive in that thinking about what's going on around me. get the hygiene factors really good. Be prompt, be good, be effective, be organized, be reliable. If you're not those things, you're not going to build all of the other stuff on top, which is really powerful. And the third one is always be thinking, if I was hiring a team of people around me, I want people to be thinking of how can I help? How else can I make this great? So offer ways that you can help. Connections, stories, information, ideas. I saw this thing. I thought you might find it useful. We don't know the answers here, but here's somebody else who's also grappling with this, and they've got two different ways of thinking about it. So you're just thinking about being something more than I'm here for 6 days and I'm going to do this thing and then I'm going to sign it off and I'm going to send you a bill. Thanks very much, and we'll never see each other again. It's a very different relationship build. So
find a place in the client's heart, in a way. I'm putting in a very simple terms. So almost like, ads, those ads that resonate with you emotionally. You remember those brands, right? And those freelancers, they do some extra like help. Of course, they will have like a special place in your heart, in a way.
I think that's exactly right. Those sales experts from the University of California I talked about at the beginning, the question that they ask to their class at the Marshall School of Business in the University of Southern California is, what would you have to do with this person in the next 5 minutes to fall in love? And they say not actually to fall in love, but what would you have to do to fall in love? And then they come back and they say, oh, I need to know more about you. I need to understand what matters to you. I need to understand what your values are. I need to understand what pressures you're under. That's the kind of relationship that you start to build with the people that really become your long-term client relationships. You understand them better than just, I know your job title, I know your responsibilities, and they understand you better than what your skills and experience are, what your CV is. They want to know who you are. You want to know who they are. That's what drives the relationship.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I have one question, and I've seen a question from the audience. Alan, we have just launched in the UK, October last year. So the next stop is North America, but we don't know when. We need to conquer the UK first. It's going really well. We've managed to build a strong community already. So now it's time for us to expand the client network. But yes, we keep our eyes on the States and America. Is there another one? Okay, just a quick one. I don't know if it's really like related to this topic, but are there any advice in terms of what to do on day one, the most important stuff on day one and on the last day? Maybe tied a bit to our topic.
That's really good. That's a really, really good question. So on day one, and I don't think this is different between freelancer and person in core role.
Yeah,
I say the most important thing to do is listen and learn. So it's very easy when you go, I've got a contract, I've got a scope of work, I've got a target, I come in, I have to start doing the doing. And that is, of course, important. You have to deliver, but take time, find the time to meet people, talk to people that are relevant to what you're doing, and get connected in to what's going on. I think that's really important. So listen and keep listening, even beyond day one. But at the beginning, ask, what do I need to know to be really effective here? What do I need to know to help the work I do, be most effective for you? On the last day, really think about two things. One is, again, the hygiene factor. So the project is closed out really cleanly. So these are the things we agreed to do. This is where I've put it. It's filed, it's organized, the files are named properly, all of the key presentations that were made, that kind of thing is clearly laid out. And all of the kind of working materials is separate from, these are the 5 final deliverables that you want to see. You don't want somebody to go into a file and find 150 different files, and within there somewhere is the final version of the presentation, for example. But the other part is really think about relationships. So it's, and I know Malt does this anyway, but personally as well, I like to get feedback from people. I like to say, what really went well. If you were saying to me what could go even better next time, if you could say what will go really even better next time, what would that be? If you were saying to somebody else, what do they need to know about me to work really effectively with me, what would you say? And showing that you're curious to develop yourself and improve yourself is a great thing that you can do to show that you're intent to become a great thought partner and a great capability partner to a client over time. So think about a really neat and professional close, and then that relationship build. At the end of that last day, think about, is it appropriate for me to go, why don't we connect in again in a month's time or a week's time or 3 months time to check in on how it's going? You're not charging for that. You're keeping the relationship going. So often people drop off the radar. So I'd like to connect in with all the people that I've met. I connect in with them on LinkedIn. And then with key people, I go, would it be helpful, interesting for you? Would you be interested in connecting in on a regular basis just to see how things are going and if there are ways I can help? And very often, if the project's gone well, people are going to go, actually, that would be really, really helpful. And let's see where we are. So, if you're not proactive about it, it's less likely that they're going to be proactive about it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Apologies for my dog.
Sounds like a massive hound.
But I think Kip was applauding you, Gary. It was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge, all these tips, all these insights. I really hope that it was as insightful for our guests as it was for me. Certainly, I really enjoyed this session, and I've learned so much as well. And there's so much that I can take away from this session. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. You will get the recording of this session. I highly encourage you to follow us and Gary on LinkedIn. We have Malt UK LinkedIn page where we have posted the announcement of this event. Hopefully, we'll post other content with Gary. He will be featured on our LinkedIn page. And I encourage you to stay tuned and to sign up for the webinars that we will have for our audience this year. Thanks a lot. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Hope you enjoy a long bank weekend if you're in the UK and in Europe. And thanks again, Gary. It was a pleasure to meet you today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jibek. Good to meet everyone in the chat, and look forward to connecting in with Malt again very soon.
Thank you. Me too. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye then.